Jaxson, you guys are down 2. You get the ball back at your own 12. Kind of take me through what that huddle was like.
I just thought we had like an overwhelming amount of confidence. We've been moving the ball all game long, and I think it was just really cool. Like before I even went out of the huddle on the sideline, like I knew we were going to score. I just looked in everybody's eyes and just to see how like determined that they were and focused and also just like calm. I thought it was just like a feeling that, like I said, just gave us like an overwhelming amount of confidence that we were going to go down and score.
Have you ever played in a game quite like this?
Hell no. That was awesome. That was like the funnest. That's like one of the funnest moments of my life.
You mentioned this after the Tulane game that you felt last year's team and that core may not have responded the way y'all did down there. Is this kind of that same vibe today where you talk about just the overwhelming confidence in that huddle that this team can handle these types of adversity or moments?
Yeah, absolutely. I knew this team was different. I thought we had a great week of practice this week. We had a team meeting, a player meeting this week, and we saw everything that everybody put out about us after the Bama game, and we were more disappointed than anybody else was about that game, and we just had to like regain everybody's focus and just to see how like close we were on the little things that made us lose the game last week. I thought that this week, we stepped it up the whole week of practice and we fixed those errors and those issues, and kind of like I said, like we just had confidence coming in before the game, and I was just so proud of how resilient our guys are, and this is just like this is a game that you'll never forget for sure.
When you guys, I guess you went for it 4th and 5 or so at your own 45, and they batted your pass down. Kind of what went through your mind at that point? You guys are down a couple scores, 8.5 minutes left. They've been rolling up yard after yard as you guys had. Did you kind of lose a little hope right there? Or did you have to you had to put a lot of faith in the defense at that point? Kind of what was going through your mind?
Yeah, absolutely. That was tough because we got like the perfect look for what we wanted to do. We were getting Trey on a one-on-one slant, and he won, and the defender just came off the edge freely and made a good play to knock it down. And you definitely like when you have it right there and it slips away, you definitely get bugged. But I thought like the guys on the sideline, just the way that they talked, like I came running off the field and all the defense guys told me that they got us. Don't worry about it, they got us. And we just had to have faith in one another. Like there was no other choice that we had to just lean on each other and rely on the guy next to us to make a play, and that's what we did.
Speaking of Trey, he was just in here just talking about having the soothing calmness, especially, just having just come off an injury, having, a big game like this. Could you kind of sense that just through him just in pregame throughout the game and kind of throughout the week of practice? You feel like it was kind of written in the stars that he was kind of going to have a kind of game like this? Yeah.
I knew it before the game had even started. He's my roommate in the hotel the night before the games, and I woke up this morning, excuse my language, but I looked at him. I was like, bro, my piss is hot. Like I'm excited to get going. And he looked at me, and usually he's like the same way. Like he's super amped up before games, and he just looked at me and he's like, bro, I feel so peaceful right now. And I like looked at him and I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, dude, I just know exactly what I'm about to do to them. And just like me looking at him like in our hotel room, I was like, bro, this kid's about to pop off today. So I knew it before the game even started.
Jaxson, you were talking about the calmness a second ago. If this game had been played a year ago, you personally, would you have been calm when you left the huddle for that game-winning drive?
I think that's tough because I feel like I had moments last year where I did it. I felt like our drive at the end of the Mississippi State game was a big-time drive. But I don't think I felt as comfortable as I did this year than last year. So I was just ready for it. Like the only thing that I could think of when I was running out on the field was, this is like a legacy game. Like how do you want your legacy to be here? And I wanted that moment, and I wanted to take full advantage of it.
Jaxson, to win it in any fashion would have been great for you guys, but to win it the way you won it, how important is that, you think, going forward?
Oh, it's so important. Just being able to like know that when we face adversity that we can overcome it, the very next week, like that's so huge. And I think that it gives a great direction and a great confidence for us moving forward. It very closely could have been the other way, and we could have been on the other side of it feeling like crap. So, just us being able to be resilient as a team and just guys being able to step up and make plays was huge, and I think it just says a lot about our culture that we built.
Jaxson, you guys got up to an early lead, but then you watched Jaden Daniels kind of come back and play flawless football.
Yeah.
What's going through your mind as a quarterback, as the opposing quarterback is playing so well?
Honestly, I expected it. Me and Jaden, we played against each other when he was at Arizona State and I was at USC. We had the exact same quarterback coach, so during the offseason, we spent a lot of time together in SoCal just training with one another. And, we joke around all the time, but, like, I always knew what kind of talent that he was. And, it was like I think we were the top two offenses in the whole SEC coming into this game, so I knew it was going to be, a shootout almost. And, he does so many great things for his team and kind of puts his team on his back just making plays in the running game and the passing game. So, I knew it was going to be a tight game, and I knew it was going to come down to the wire, much respect to him.
Jaxson finishing with 439 of yards of total offense, good enough for 15th place all time for you in Ole Miss history. What happened this week following the Alabama loss, and what were your thoughts about how the offense, in your opinion, would play this week, led up to the big game, of course, tonight?
Well, our game plan this week was quite different than last week. This week we kept it pretty simple, and we were just focused on going fast. We knew that they had issues with tempo. So we tried to keep it like some of our base stuff. We switched some things up here and there, not to make it the same look week in and week out, but we just wanted to come in and play really fast. And I just felt really confident in the game plan. And I told the guys during our player meeting that for me last week, like, that was a wake-up call. Like, I knew that going forward, like, I was going to have to study harder than I've ever studied. I was going to have to be a leader more than I've ever been a leader. And I just wanted all the guys to know that, like, they could have confidence in me when the game's on the line like that.
Watching that final drive unfold against a guy that you're all familiar with and all that, where were you kind of during that final drive on the sideline? I mean, you just kind of what was kind of go through your head? And are you type of guy when they're that close to scoring in that kind of situation of the game, the guy to pace around, not look, so forth? Or I mean, what was
I was pacing. I think I bit off like all my fingernails. I was kind of freaking out, but. Once they started getting the false start penalties, it made me feel a lot better. And, I knew that we were going to – I felt like once it came down to it, like, there was no way we were going to lose that game. So I was definitely anxious, but excited for the result.
Offensive line kept your jersey clean today. What can you kind of say about their performance tonight?
Yeah, I'm so proud of them. Just like the criticism that they've received, I know it's been hard on them. And, we just had to get back to our identity as a team of being a balanced offense. And they took great ownership and accountability of, how they performed last week and the weeks before. And all they wanted to do was come out this week and have a coming out party. And that's exactly what they did. I knew after the very first drive, that every single one of those dudes was locked in and playing for one another. I felt like at times that really wasn't the case. Like, we just weren't in sync at times previously before this game. And, they had a great week, an outstanding week of practice of being physical and moving the line of scrimmage and that stuff. And, we wanted to run the ball, and we wanted to make that a point of emphasis coming into this week because, we knew that we could have success in that part of the game. And, like I said, they took great ownership and accountability of, taking the next step as a unit, and they played their ass off. And, when they are able to play at a high level like that, it makes everything so much easier.
Do you pay any attention to the electricity of the crowd? And if you do, what was the atmosphere like tonight?
Oh, it was incredible. Usually when we come out during the second half, it's not a full stadium still. So when I came out in the second half, I was freaking pumped. And, even when, they're booing or just you can see the passion that they have. And when the LSU side, when they're chanting and we're chanting back at them, I love that. And, they stood with us the whole game. When it came down to the wire, I really feel like the reason they had those 2 false starts were because of them, and they played a huge role in us winning this game.
saw your social media live of you guys in the locker room. Where is that the most fun locker room you've been in, or does last year's Kentucky game?
No, this was the best. This was the best for sure. No comparison.
Thanks, Jaxson.
Thank you.